Welcome to the first episode of Brian's Deductions on this channel. I'm Brian, and if this is your first time, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for taking the time to click on this video. If you want to see previous videos that I've done that are Brian's Deductions that just weren't on this channel, you can check the description below. We have a playlist of videos that I did on the What's the Play podcast for that were Brian's Deductions. For returning viewers that have seen the other ones, I appreciate you for taking the time to click on this video as well. With that being said, we'll jump right into the content for today. So for those of you who were here before, I did a 2023 offseason prediction preview last year for baseball, but I only did like the top 15 players if I'm not mistaken. This year, given the level of talent and the level of depth in the class, I decided to move it up to 25. But that will be broken down into two parts. So for this episode, we're just going to do players 1 through 12, and then part 2 we'll pick up from players 13 all the way to 25. I wanted to try to do this again, like right before the winter meetings, so you know everything would come out pretty quickly around the time that this prediction comes out. So before we get to players 1 through 12, I just want to give a quick honorable mention to Blake Snell, who signed with the Dodgers a few weeks ago. Obviously, if you're a Dodgers fan, you're hoping that you get the second half of Blake Snell, where he pitched lights out. He had a little bit of a rough start, obviously, because last year he was in this position. He was in the same position last year, being a free agent, but he wasn't able to get the deal that he wanted, so he settled for a short-term deal. But he got it. He signed it so late that I believe spring training. They were either middle of spring training or spring training was almost over. So he didn't have that ramp up period like most starting pitchers do. But this year he'll obviously have that time now that he'll be locked in and secured. And like we said before, if you're a Dodgers fan, you hope that you get something close to the second half pitcher that he was this year. And if you do, then you have another lights out ace for a team that is becoming increasingly stacked by the day. So just wanted to get that out of the way first. And with that, we will now move on to the top player and top free agent of this class in Juan Soto. So as we kind of talked about last year, obviously Juan is still a player at the top of his game, entering his prime years. He had a great season last year for the Yankees. He was a very integral part of them making the World Series, especially with his 3-run homer against the Guardians. That put them on the verge of going to the World Series, and then eventually after Luke Weaver locked it down, they were able to make it to the World Series. So obviously another great year. And being able to do it on one of the biggest stages, if not the biggest stage in baseball, with the New York Yankees, has definitely helped Juan continue to increase his stock as a player and as a free agent. So the bidding war was always going to be pretty robust for him. So I don't think that he eclipses what Shohei got last year, because Shohei can obviously pitch and he can hit. So that's why he was able to get the $700 million contract last year. But I do think that Juan may be in the ballpark just because he is 26, if I'm not mistaken. So he's still got plenty of prime years left. And so with this one, I believe it comes down to the Yankees and the Mets. I understand that the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox have made offers, but I believe that it just comes down to those two because it seems like Juan wants to be in New York, and I just feel like those are the two teams that could really use him the most. So for this one, I have him going to the Mets, and the reason why I have him going to the Mets is mainly because I feel like the Yankees have a number that they're not willing to go past. I'm not sure what that number is, but I'm speculating $600 million, but I think there's a number that they're not willing to go past. And given that the Mets have an owner in Steve Cohen who had another tier of a luxury tax implemented after his first year as an owner, because he was spending serious amounts of money. I just don't think I don't think there's a ceiling on what he's willing to pay for Juan Soto. So I think that the Mets outbid the Yankees here, and they find a way to they find a way to make Juan Soto a Met, and I believe they do it for 13 years and $650 million. Now we move on to the second player on this list, and that is Corbin Burnes, who played on the Orioles last year. He had a fine season as well. First year in the AL. Considering that he was playing in the AL East, which has a lot of hitters' parks, that is also a contributing factor. But he had a very good season. He finished 5th in Cy Young voting, if I'm not mistaken, and he was a very integral part of the Baltimore Orioles making it to the playoffs. So with this situation, I think that if the Mets don't sign Juan Soto, they probably would be in the driver's seat to sign him. But given that they gave the level of money to him that I believe they're going to give him, I think that this is a situation where Corbin ends up where they don't end up shelling out that money for him. They probably look for another player specifically, or maybe just re-signing one of their pitchers who have gone into free agency, who we'll talk about later. So then at that point, you think maybe Red Sox, probably the Blue Jays, just because they've been big game hunting, even a team like maybe the Rangers and teams like that. But I believe, given the fact that Blake Snell was signed by the Dodgers and there's a hole that could be filled in San Francisco, and you couple the fact that, Burnes is a California native, I feel like this is a situation where the Giants go ahead and give him this money because, again, you lose a guy like Snell. And if Snell is anywhere close to what we think he could be, that's basically an ace-level pitcher that you're letting out of the door. So I think to try to fill that void, they would probably be best served to go after Burnes. So I believe that Corbin Burnes does become a San Francisco Giant, and I believe they sign him for 7 years and $210 million. And with that, we move on to our top trade target of the 2024 offseason, and that is Garrett Crochet, who is currently playing for the White Sox. So this was his first full year start as a starter. Before, he was just mostly a reliever. Obviously, the record in the ERA may not be as impressive as you would think for a guy this high, but given the fact that he was playing on the White Sox, who lost 119 games, if I'm not mistaken, they lost 119 games this year. So the win-loss record could be a little deceiving. This is a guy that probably almost got moved at the trade deadline, but because he was saying that he wasn't willing to pitch in the postseason unless he got an extension, or at least that was the rumor that was put out there. I think that is what kept teams from trading for him then. So obviously now you have the offseason, you have an idea of probably what the White Sox would want to be offered, and this is a situation where you can get a guy that maybe with a little refinement and obviously a little bit more run supported on a better team, he could go from a guy that was good this year to possibly even a Cy Young candidate next year if he's on the right team. So given the circumstances of the last two moves that we talked about, I think that this is a situation where, even though they're in the American League, I think that this comes down to the Red Sox and the Orioles just because of their farm system, and I think that's something that the White Sox are definitely going to value in this situation. So I think here the Orioles grab him because I think, again, kind of like the Giants following that theme, you lose out on Corbin Burnes. They probably don't want to shell out the money to go get somebody else if you can't get Burnes, because there's probably not anybody. I would say Corbin's probably in a tier by himself, and even like pitchers that we'll talk about later. They're guys that could be there, but they're not guys that you would say are tier 1 level starting pitchers, probably so. So yeah, this is a situation where I think the Orioles decide to pony up, go ahead and get Crochet, especially with there being some question marks in the rotation in terms of health and things of that nature. So you go ahead and get Crochet. In the ideal world, they probably would like to get Burnes and then still probably trade for Crochet, because then at that point you have a nice 1-2 punch. But if they miss out on Burnes, I definitely think that that's a situation where they go ahead to get Crochet, and they probably divvy that money somewhere else, whether it's on the offensive side or maybe even getting another starting pitcher. So Garrett Crochet, we predict him to go to the Orioles. Okay. So our next player is another pitcher, this time from Japan, and Roki Sasaki. So this is kind of a situation like Yoshinobu Yamamoto last year, where obviously you have a Japanese pitcher coming to being posted and coming to the U.S. The difference is, though, because of league rules where you're not considered a true free agent unless you're 25 years of age and have played at least 6 years of international baseball, Roki will be considered an international amateur free agent instead of a true free agent like Yamamoto was last year. So his situation will be a lot closer to Shohei Ohtani's, in that while the market will be there in terms of teams, he can't command the amount of money that Yamamoto did last year, because the money that you can get basically comes from teams' international bonus pool instead of it just coming from their cap space, luxury tax space that they have to dole out to MLB free agents. So Sasaki will have his level of suitors. I think that I think the Yankees will be involved in this one for sure, given the low price point. The Dodgers will be involved, Cubs, Giants. I think every major team you can think of that may need pitching is going to be involved. But I think this will be a 2-team race between the Dodgers and the Cubs. I think that the Cubs have a nice have a nice shot because they were able to acquire Shota Imanaga last year, who was also a pitcher that came over last year and had some good success. Had some success early on, but I think, like most of the industry, I think that the Dodgers find a way to get Sasaki, given that they have Ohtani, they have Yamamoto, and they've had other guys that have been successful. And I just think that the LA market, especially with what the Dodgers have done in terms of winning, and then obviously bringing in that Japanese fan base, I feel like that's just somewhere that Sasaki might just see, and it being closer to home than most places because it's on the West Coast. I think it's just a situation where it's almost a match made in heaven for Sasaki, and he decides to sign there. He probably signed something pretty close to what Ohtani signed for. So maybe no more than maybe like $10 million a year, if that. But like it won't be a Masahiro Tanaka or Yoshinobu Yamamoto type contract. It won't be anything like the 300s, like it would have been if he waited a couple more years. So he won't break the bank. He won't break the bank, but we do predict that he will be a Dodger going forward. All right, so the fifth player on our list and the second position player, first infielder for us, is Alex Bregman. So this is a tricky one because Alex's position as a third baseman should open him up to a lot of teams, because there are a lot of teams that could use a third baseman, especially of his caliber. But I think him being 31, combined with the fact combined with the whole Houston scandal, even though that didn't affect, Carlos Correa and I forgot. Oh, and George Springer. I know it didn't affect them, but I believe they were a little bit younger when they hit the market, so teams at least felt like they had a few more prime years that they could get out of those players. But I think that with that plus the scandal situation, it may be a little more difficult for him to find a team. Now, there may be a team like the Nationals or the Blue Jays that may be willing to spend that level of money because they feel like those prime years are enough, and they feel like by the time he gets to age 34, age 35, he will have gotten enough return on investment for them to be justified. But for this one, I'm going to predict that he does re-sign with the Astros, just because I just feel like it's kind of like an Altuve situation where it's just like I don't know if any other team is willing to make that risk, just purely off chemistry reasons potentially, and obviously the potential sharp decline. The potential decline, I won't say sharp decline, but the potential decline that he may have as a hitter and as a fielder. So I think Alex Bregman stays, and I think he signs for 7 years and $180 million with the Astros. But it could go out. It could go anyway. There could be a situation where he signs maybe a 5 or 6 year deal because he doesn't have as much interest, or he could get that 7th year and just end up going somewhere else. But yeah, so we're gonna mock him for 7 years and $180 million. But there are the volatility of the contract, along with the team that he may sign with, is there. So we'll put that out there. All right. So move on to our next trade target, and Devin Williams, who pitched for the Milwaukee Brewers last year. So this one was a tougher one to mock him to, because it seems like the Brewers are like ready to trade him, but there are a lot of teams either who already have a strong closer / bullpen situation, or there are a lot of moving pieces that will determine whether or not they're in it. So, for example, a team like the Yankees, I probably would have mocked him to them, but because of the emergence of Luke Weaver and the potential additions or subtractions of both Tommy Kahnle and Clay Holmes, I couldn't go ahead and mock him to the Yankees, because I believe that if they get both Holmes and Kahnle back, they probably don't go after Williams. But if they lose one or both, I think they're more likely to allocate more money there, just because it's a bona fide ace reliever. Even if you don't have him as your closer, you at least have him. You at least know that you have a guy that can lock down the 8th inning, if necessary. But I don't think they make that move. The Red Sox, I think it's possible, but I think they may try to look for a slightly cheaper closer. But we'll probably touch on that in part 2. Orioles already kind of have a closer, Felix Bautista, so didn't think that was there. I just didn't think there were a lot of teams in the NL that the Brewers would be willing to trade him to. The only NL team I could think of was the Padres, just because even though they have a closer, and Suarez, who did a very good job this year, I just feel like when it comes to AJ Preller, you can never count him out on those type of potential deals. Even with, obviously San Diego looking to cut payroll back, that just feels like a situation that AJ Preller wouldn't pass up. So I definitely wouldn't be surprised if the Padres threw their name in the hat. But I think this is a situation where he goes to the Rangers, and I think even with the Rangers, it's kind of like a Yankee situation, because I think it's highly dependent on what happens with David Robertson and Kirby Yates, especially Kirby's, as Kirby was their closer. But I think that the Rangers might see Williams has the potential improvement on both of those players, and they may feel like they can get another cheap option, or maybe have a guy like Jose Leclerc as their eighth inning guy should they get Devin Williams. So I believe that the Rangers are probably best positioned right now to be the team to grab him. But any of those teams that I named, I definitely think are gonna be in the running. I'm just not too sure if they're going to go after Devin, especially if they're able to retain people that they were that are currently free agents right now. So that's the only issue with that. So now we move on to our seventh player on the list, who is Max Fried, who pitched for the Atlanta Braves last season. Originally, I had him just re-signing with the Braves, but given the potential luxury tax situations that they may have to deal with, that's maybe, especially given the contract that I believe that he will get, it may be a little too pricey for them. This could be a prime player that say the Giants look at if they don't go after Corbin Burnes, just because he's a little bit cheaper than Corbin. So he's probably in like the tier 2, I would say, tier 1.5, whatever you want to say. So he's like right underneath Corbin in terms of pitchers, but he would be a guy that could fill in for Blake Snell and be pretty adequate, especially given that he is a lefty starter that is good at eating innings. So yeah, that was the original thought, but I think that if the Giants do go ahead and get Burnes, I think that this is a situation where the Cubs come in and sign Fried, because this just feels like a guy, even though they got Imanaga last year, I feel like this would be the closest thing to big game hunting in terms of pitching that they would probably be able to get, given that they don't go after Crochet, or they don't sign Burnes. This is probably your best consolation prize. So I think that Fried would be able to step in as well, given like injuries to not injuries, I'm thinking about the Brave staff, I'm sorry. But yeah, I think he would be able to step in, give good innings. The only question is, well, I guess with the money you're giving him, you would view him as a 1, but do you view him as that 1A, as that game 1 starter, as that guy that you want to give the ball to every 5 days? That would be the only potential hesitance I would see from the Cubs, but yeah, I think that this would be a signing right up their alley, given that they don't land either Burnes or Sasaki or Crochet. So yeah, I have Fried going to the Cubs here for 6 years and $156 million. And again, this could be a situation where somebody else comes and scoops him, but I think that it's probably going to come down to the Braves and the Cubs. You can never count out the Dodgers in a situation like this, but I think given the fact that they already got Snell, that probably eliminates them. So yeah, we'll stick with the Cubs for this prediction, and see where he ends up. Our 8th player on the list is another trade target, and Luis Robert Jr., another White Sox. It seems that most people expect him to be traded. The only question is, when will he be traded? Some people think that it may happen in the offseason. A lot of people think that it may happen at the trade deadline, just because they want him to be able to rebuild value, given how tough his 2024 season was. But if he has a season closer to 2023, then they'll probably be able to get good value for him, and it would justify his place on this list in terms of ranking. I think that I think if it gets closer to the deadline, there are more teams that are more likely to jump in. But just because I feel like this is a situation where, again, you're kind of thinking big game hunting, I think this is a situation where a team like the Blue Jays come in and trade for him if they feel like they have the chance, because I think there's an opening there either in the outfield or at DH where he could provide a spark. And given that they've been in on Juan Soto, I would think that you would think that getting a outfield bat that can slug for sure would be something right up their alley, especially given that they're trying to contend and trying to extend both Vladimir Guerrero and Bo Bichette. That's the team I have him being traded to if he does get traded in the offseason, but it is very likely that the White Sox just hold on to him and don't put him up for sale until closer to the trade deadline. So for our ninth player on the list, we have Willy Adames. So this is the premier shortstop of the class. I think given his ability to hit for power, get steals, and play great defense, basically kind of being a 5-tool guy, but given the production he's had, I think that this is a situation where he's going to and his age, I believe that he's going to be able to command at least a 6-year deal, 5-6-year deal, and he'll definitely get a nice payday. So this is a situation where I believe, kind of like earlier we talked about, I think the Giants come in to make this signing. I can see the Brewers potentially trying to keep him, but given the price point, it may be a little bit too much for them. But I think this is a situation where the Giants go after him, given that Brandon Crawford is just retired, so that shortstop's position is opened up. This may not feel like the Carlos Correa signing to Giants fans, in terms of it being big, but I do think it's one of those moves where if they're able to get him, it's something that they will absolutely appreciate going forward. I have Willy Adames going to the Giants for 6 years and $150 million. It is possible that he may make more than that and maybe get another year, or maybe just get a 5-year deal. But I think this is definitely a situation. This is definitely something the Giants may look to get, but there would definitely be a good amount of teams looking to get Mr. Adames. So the next guy on our list is Pete Alonso. Another guy that probably will have a nice market, even though his propensity to strike out may scare a few teams away. I think that his bat plays in any lineup, and I believe he's good enough defensively at first base for people to deal with the strikeouts and other things that it may come with. I don't necessarily see a crazy bidding war for Alonso just because of some of the negative issues, but by negative issues I just mean production wise and play wise. I'm not saying anything off the field or anything like that. But I think this is a situation where it comes down to whether the Mets want to keep him or not. And I don't see a reason why they wouldn't want to bring him back. I mean, I understand that people say that like Vientos and I don't want to pronounce his name wrong, but Brent Batty, I believe it is. You'd be able to have, one of them at first and the other at third. But again, when you have a guy like Pete who's been mashing, unless you just think that his bat speed is going to decline and you think that there's going to be this decline in production just from the plate, I think that it may just be something that they're willing to live with. So I believe that the Mets do bring him back, and I do think that they bring him back for 5 years and $130 million. And I think at worst, if he's not able to play first base, still having him as a permanent DH isn't all that bad. So I think that that's a place where they can put him if it really gets crazy, but only time will tell. But yeah, so we have him going to the Mets there. So the 11th player on the list, we have Jesús Luzardo, who is currently pitching for the Marlins. Kind of like Robert, I think that this is a situation where the Miami probably holds on to him. But if he does become available, I do think that this is another AL East kind of battle where I think that this is either Red Sox or Yankees dependent, because I think both of them, if they're going to get starting pitchers, they're probably going to look more so in the trade market than outright signing guys, unless it's more like the mid-level, like number 3, number 4 starter type of players, instead of like obviously the Corbin Burnes and the Max Frieds of the world. So here, I believe that Jesus, if he does get traded, goes to the Yankees, just because the Yankees' familiarity with the Marlins, they've had a lot of trades over the years. So I think they're kind of comfortable with each other, and I kind of feel like they know what the Yankees know what Miami would probably want for Luzardo, and vice versa, and the Miami would know what the Yankees are willing to give up to get Luzardo. So I feel like that level of comfort is what puts the Yankees slightly ahead of the Red Sox, even though the Red Sox have the better farm system. So the Red Sox could be able to pull that trade off. I just think that that's a situation where the Yankees are just find a way to get it done. And I definitely think they go ahead, if Luzardo is available, I do think they go ahead and try to go get him instead of, again, shelling out that money, especially if they end up moving on from a guy like Nestor Cortez and finding a way to trade him. There are pitchers on this list down the line that I considered predicting the Yankees for, but again, I just feel like for them, given how it looks like they want to allocate money, whether they sign Juan Soto or not, I feel like they're going to look more in the trade market to get starting pitching than to shell out a whole bunch of money. Okay. And for the final player of part 1, we have Anthony Santander from the Orioles. So with this one, it's kind of like the Pete Alonso dilemma, but a little bit more, because Santander isn't the greatest defensive outfielder, so he may be closer to a permanent DH, maybe even a first base type guy if you want to try to get him there. I think there'll be a few teams for his services, but I think this is kind of a situation where Anthony ends up staying in Baltimore, because I feel like the teams that have been rumored to grab him, whether it's the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Royals, other teams like that, I think they would prefer an outfielder, even with that level of bat. Maybe the Royals might be the exception here, but most teams probably will want more of that outfield power bat that also is good at the field. Especially probably a team like the Yankees, who will probably be looking for a left fielder to replace Alex Verdugo. And, so they can, and most likely they'll be probably starting Jason Dominguez at center field, so they're probably going to move Judge back over to right if they can. So if in the ideal world, I think the Yankees are probably looking for a left fielder. So that would be the only hold up with them and Santander. I feel like it's kind of the same thing with the Dodgers, except the Dodgers already kind of have players that could DH, whether it's Ohtani, Muncy, or other guys like that, so that kind of eliminates them. So maybe the Royals could jump in here, because I think they definitely feel like they could use another power bat to team up with Salvador Perez in the middle of that lineup. So probably him. So it'd probably be, I guess, in the ideal where you probably have Vinny Pasquantino as the second or third hitter. You have Salvador Perez right after him, and then you'd have Santander. So the Royals could definitely be a player here. This is definitely something that could happen. But again, I think that just for this situation, I think Anthony ends up staying with his incumbent team, and I believe that he will sign for 4 years and $80 million. All right, so that is the end of part 1. I'd like to thank you if you got to this point in the video for continuing to watch. Hopefully I did not put anybody to sleep. I hope I was a little bit more energetic than usual. thank you again for taking the time to watch this. If you would like to watch previous videos that I've done before, they'll probably be right here. There'll probably be the playlist, and then obviously the video from last year. So go ahead and check those out if you would like to. Part 2 will be out very soon. Once I put that together. And again, appreciate y'all for being here to view. Like, comment, share, and subscribe with everybody you know. Let me know what videos you would like me to see. Let me know what videos you would like to see going forward. And yeah, thank you again, and see you on the next episode of Brian's Deductions.